Welcome back to Counterculture. I'm here with Mr. Periwinkle.
We have determined that the color of my shirt is periwinkle.
And I
thought it was violet or lavender or something like that. But it doesn't matter. It is in the color. It is in the palette of that I like. My favorite color, purple.
Purple is your favorite color?
I love purple.
I don't think we've ever talked about this.
That's okay. We're talking about something else today.
Periwinkle. I think it's a fun thing to say. All right, we got to get serious.
Yes.
Counterculture.
Yeah.
We talk about things that go against the norm, the way of thinking, right? Most of us Christians believe that we are in the last days, weeks, months, years. We're in the last times.
Let's not say most. Many do.
Mostly many do.
Mostly many.
Right.
Many, mostly many.
So many people think that, this world is winding down. God's timeline is coming to an end.
Okay.
One of the things when we talk about that is the fact that God promises in Revelation that there's a bunch of catastrophes coming, right? There is a bunch of bad things coming according to the book of Revelation, right? And so normally our culture is reactive in nature, the vast majority of people, right? There are people who are prepped for things. There are people who are looking at things and going, hey, what if this happens? What if this happens, right? But the vast majority of people just going about their everyday business, not thinking about things, right? So you just traveled recently, and people were asking you if you felt the earthquake that was up near Watertown area, right? Mm-hmm. And you said you were driving and no, you didn't really feel it, right? But I asked you a question about around here and said, listen, if a 6.0 earthquake hit the Chautauqua County region, right? What would happen? Like, would most of our buildings survive? Would our infrastructure survive? And you said what?
I doubt it. No.
Right.
Most of it would not. No.
Most of it would not, right?
Right.
No,
we've never had to worry about it.
Right, we don't even think about it,
no.
Right? No. But again, that's the whole point, right? There's a lot of things that Christians aren't thinking about that maybe we should just think about for a second or two in times and be prepared for things. So again, if you knew that a 7.0 earthquake was going to hit our area, right? Western New York. Let's just make it all Western New York. But a 7.0 earthquake was going to hit somewhere in Western New York in the next, let's say, 7 days, right? How would knowing that change your life? Would it change your life?
Probably.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
I would be thinking about it constantly, and be like, okay, what am I going to do? Because I've never experienced an earthquake.
Right.
Okay. Like most of America, we've had it. I mean, people have experienced earthquakes, but I mean, we pretty much rebound pretty quick around here.
Right.
We've had, the last, with the tornadoes and everything, they've been hitting all winter, and we're pretty resilient people. We have been anyway in the past. How would it change? I would probably be thinking about where will I go? What do I do? I'd do a little research. Okay, I don't have a 2-story house, so where would I go? Do you go? What do they say? I know what to do in a tornado because I came out of tornado. I was in a tornado area, grew up in it. You just kind of was like, okay. And when a tornado comes through, you go on the front porch and you watch for it. Mm-hmm. That's a joke. You don't do that, by the way. But that's what my dad would do. He'd go out and watch.
I'm taking you as the authority.
I do that. I'll go out and I want to watch the storm.
So would I. I love watching our storms come in over the lake.
Love it. An earthquake is another story. I've never been through one. I take that back. When we were in Gardner, Kansas, we were sitting there and we heard some stuff rattle. And it reminded me of when I was a kid, the train would go through and you'd hear, and I thought, oh, okay, it was nothing. And we found out there was a slight tremor that went through. It wasn't nothing got broken, anything like that. But what you're talking about, I think probably if I knew 7 days this is going to happen, I would probably be doing a little research on what could I do, what would be the wise thing to do if this thing happened. But the bottom line is, if I don't know when it's going to happen, what if I'm in my car and I get swallowed up? You know, like one of the craters out in the parking lot here.
Sure.
'Cause, you know, someone we know didn't, well, not you, but, you know, someone else who may watch this isn't fixing his driveway. But anyway, I'm joking. I had to throw that in because we were just talking about it. Anyway.
You know who you are.
You know who you are. So I think I would probably also try not to panic. I would probably give myself time to just say, okay, you know what? I need to live my life because we're not supposed to live in fear. God didn't give us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. So I think I would try to be aware and prepare myself probably more mentally than anything, because I think if an earthquake happens, you don't have any idea what's going to happen which way or the other.
Right. So, okay, so everything you said, I love it because it sounded much like with Jesus. Jesus warned these things are going to happen, right? We don't know when they're going to happen. So we prepare, do a little bit of research, we live our lives, we do all this stuff, right? But let's say that you believed, right? You did your research and you found out that, you know what, there isn't a building in Jamestown that's going to survive a 7.0 earthquake, right? There's houses, right? Like, for instance, my house is on pillars. A 7.0 earthquake in my house will probably not be on pillars anymore, right? Something's going to happen to it, right? So you look at that and you say, all right, let's say that you do your research and you actually believe, like, holy cow, a 7.0 earthquake is going to hit in the next week in our area and our buildings aren't going to survive. What, you do the research, you believe that this is going to happen. So then what's the outpouring of that? What do you do with that information as a pastor for not only your church, but the larger community? What do you do if you really believe this is going to happen?
Well, I think you try and help other people prepare for it as well, as best you possibly can. You know, and we may not be able to help everybody, but to do what we can to say, hey, you know, you need to be thinking about this, be ready for it, you know, mentally, whatever. As a pastor, I'm going to be ready spiritually.
Yeah.
Because we don't know. And, you know, you're sitting here talking about, you know, this area being devastated. I remember when we were in Kansas, there had been tornadoes went through, and there was, I think it was Greensburg, Kansas. It was a little town, little farm.
Right.
I don't know how many, 12 houses or something. The whole thing was leveled. There was not a house left. There was not an elevator left, a grain elevator left. Nothing was left. It was just totally leveled, and the tornadoes took everything away. I mean, it was miles away. It was all, Greensburg was now, it had expanded its territory. It was all over the place because, and they questioned, do we rebuild this little town or not? You know. So do we? So try to say, look, you know, this is going to happen. They're 99.9% sure this thing's going to happen. You need to be prepared as you possibly can.
So if they warn us like this, you know, they tell us, hey, somewhere in the next week this is going to happen, right? If they, let me give you a hypothetical to add to that, right? If they tell us that, if they say, listen, what normally happens is a 7.0 earthquake is going to happen in Oregon, right? And then what happens is a day or so later, the same level earthquake is going to happen where we live, right? So if you saw, holy cow, all of a sudden all over the news, 7.0 earthquake in Oregon, you now know that you have a definite day or two left, right? What does that do to our sense of urgency, right? So we've looked it up, we're prepared, we've told other people. Now all of a sudden it becomes a reality of, all right, this is going to hit, right? Do you as a pastor, do you call out your people and say, hey, I just think the safest place is our church, the basement of our church. Let's just all gather here. Let's all be together. We can pray, we can sing, we can do whatever we want. Or do we just let people kind of find that safe place that you're supposed to be, and we'll pick up the pieces on the other side of this?
I don't know where they'll be at that time. So do you hunker down? So there's the question. So, okay, 2 days. So all day long we're going to be hunkered down in the church. Most people aren't going to do that.
Nope.
They're going to live their lives. And what does they say? 95% of things we worry about don't happen.
Right. So
How many things did we buy? I remember this past winter when Buffalo got hit with their second blizzard, which
Yeah.
was worse than the first one, if I remember correctly. I had not watched the news or anything, so I had no idea what was going on. Because they're 80 miles north of us, and just 50 miles north of us, they start getting hit in Silver Creek and north, and I have no clue because we got a dusting
Nothing.
down
Yeah.
there. And my sister texted me. She goes, "You okay?" I said, "Yeah. How are you doing?" I'm totally oblivious. She goes, "Well, I thought you maybe got the blizzard." I'm
Yeah.
like, "What blizzard?" She goes, "The one that hit Buffalo." I had to go to the news. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, they were like devastated." I had no idea. But how many of the now?
Yeah.
This is part of the problem. Let's go back to your eschatology thing you were talking about at the beginning,
Yep.
which you started. There's so many people, oh, it's, the end of the world, the end of the world. This has gone on for centuries, the end of the world. Paul thought Jesus was coming back in his day
absolutely.
and didn't. So now,
short.
so now what you get, and isn't that what the enemy wants me to tell them they got time?
Mm-hmm.
And so really, as we were talking about this earlier, is we don't know.
We don't know.
And this is one of the things you talk about people that are all concerned we're living in the last days and everything. And maybe we are, maybe we aren't. That's one of the things that Jesus was pretty ambiguous about some of these things. He told us there's going to be things, because, when you hear wars and rumors of wars, there has never been a time in the history of mankind there has not been a war of some kind. Somewhere.
Sure.
So, now, are there earthquakes happening here, there, and everywhere? Yes. Is the Euphrates River drying up? Yes, it is. Are there rivers springing up that were not in Israel and different areas? I've seen all stuff. I've seen,
Yep.
And here's the bottom line: we spend so much time on trying to figure this stuff out instead of doing what Jesus was about, was getting people in relationship with Him and the Father.
So that's part of what.
And that is the ultimate prep, because here's what we know is going to happen.
Yep.
We know that someday all of our stuff, unless Jesus comes first, your stuff, my stuff, is going to be in an estate sale at some point, or it's going to be in a dumpster and taken somewhere. That's just the way it is.
Nope, it's so true.
And so, are we prepared? And this is, my denomination does not they did not take an official stance on pre or post, because there is so much interpretive stuff that goes on, but Jesus talks so little about it. Yeah. And maybe the ambiguity is supposed to be there, so we're not saying, it's going to happen on this day, I'm going to live like the devil up until that day.
It's exactly, again, it's part of why I asked you the questions the way that I asked you, right? If we get a warning 7 days out that, hey, this could happen.
Yeah.
But if we now get it down to like, hey, 1 or 2 days, what would change? Well, the actuality is, a lot of Christians have been warned. They think we're living in the last days. And so they're prepping. Not by going out and telling people about Jesus.
Yeah.
Not being counterculture.
Well, if that's the case, I'm going to do as much,
They're prepping for themselves, right?
Yes.
We're saving up food. We're saving up supplies. We're saving up stuff.
Yeah.
For who? For us.
And are we? This is one of the things that I've pondered a lot. Is people, you got to have a place where you're going to go when it hits the fan. That whole stuff. Are we supposed to skedaddle?
No, I think the answer is
because
no.
How do we continue to minister if we're in a bunker hiding somewhere, protecting ourselves? And then there's the question of, do I want to be the one who's coming out of my bunker and having what's left over? And if indeed God does skedaddle us out of here, which isn't going to matter anyway. Well, we're not supposed to live in fear.
Right. Jesus said there'll be 2 people in a field.
Yes.
Where are they? In a field,
yes,
working,
doing what they're doing what they're not supposed to be
doing.
They're
not sitting
living
underground.
Their lives.
Right.
Yeah.
They're where they're supposed to be, which is super important. Right.
They're not sitting there wringing their hands.
But if we knew that we were a day away from a major earthquake in this area, or any other kind of thing, shouldn't our response not be, let's go to Walmart and store up? Because, hey, we might lose power and we might lose water. That's the culture way of thinking. Prep for the storm that's coming, right? But shouldn't our counterculture activity be, get out, tell people, worry about their spiritual, right, eternal destination, worry about their spirituality, instead of we fall in, too many Christians fall into what the world does,
Yep.
right? Which is, how do we prep to save me?
Yeah.
What if God's plan isn't to save you? What if you fill your basement with enough stuff for 3, 4, 5 years and an earthquake destroys it all? Total waste of time, total waste of energy. And what good did you do for the kingdom, right? So again, I just think that we're living in a timeline where people are talking about catastrophe all the time. Well, what are we doing if we really believe it?
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
really
We're more
believe
concerned about our own survival than bringing as many people along with us. It reminds me of when the pandemic hit. And I remember it was like the Sunday before churches had to close and everything had to close except for Walmart and
Yeah.
other things,
Yep.
you know.
The essentials.
The essentials, yeah. And I remember someone saying, well, I don't care if I get it. I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
And my response was, well, I have loved ones who are not.
It's, again, there's such a craziness within the church today that people's whole attitude is that. Oh, I'm ready. I'm good.
Well, but we
I'm
have
okay.
fostered in the last 30 years. I've been in ministry for 30 years full time, and I remember getting into ministry, and it was when the church growth movement started. Everything was moving toward big, and
Yep.
the corporate model of church, not the shepherding model of church and pastoring. And we created consumers. We created consumers in the church. Not that we did not have them beforehand. All you had to figure out with consumerism in the church before the church growth movement was go try and have someone else sit on the piano bench.
Yeah.
Or the organ bench, or I want to teach the children. That's my area.
Yeah.
There was a consumerism already there. I'm here for me. We call it carnality in the Church of the Nazarene and just in general, but so it just got worse. It just got worse because now we got to do seeker, and here's what's interesting is it's cyclical things, you know. Because then people were like, well, I came to church not to hear a rock concert. I can see that I hear that anyway. I came to hear something different. I'm assuming I'm going to get something different if I come here.
Yes, I've had all the whole. We
I've had
so
all
badly want to be
Yeah.
conditioned to make them feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And
And we did that long before that because we had wooden pews. Well, now we got to put pads on them. Well, now we got to get air conditioning in the church instead of fans. You know, sad day when the old ladies had to quit bringing the funeral parlor fans. You know,
I really miss those days.
I bet you do.
I miss those.
I only heard about them. I didn't experience them.
Oh man, I got fans
so-
from behind from people in front.
Yeah,
It was great.
Yeah, exactly. So you know, the prepping thing. So I'm going to go in the Church of the Nazarene began inner city.
Mm-hmm.
It was for the poor.
Yeah.
And I remember reading part of the history. There was something I read is that within 15 years the church started moving out of downtown LA out to the suburbs. It started moving out.
Yep.
And then it was in 1940s, early 1940s. I think it was J.B. Chapman was a general superintendent of the Church of the Nazarene. He wrote an article in the old Herald of Holiness magazine for the Church of the Nazarene. He said, and the title of it was, "Doesn't anybody get saved around here anymore?" And in just a few short years, we had quit concerning ourselves with people getting saved and just what we want and what we liked, and that's human nature in many ways.
Well, and we are continuing to foster that, right?
Yes.
Perfect place to end. Listen, counterculture. If catastrophe was announced to hit tomorrow, right? Would you be all about you, or would you be all about others? Right? Which way would you be? Our culture tells us be all about you, be all in on you. Our counterculture, Jesus, tells us to be all about others. So we want to leave it right there. We'll pick it up next time with Mr. Periwinkle. Counterculture.
Grace and peace.